Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to my channel, I Hate Rock Music. And today I want to talk about the band Matching Mole. And I know anybody that's watching me, which isn't very many, I usually cover a lot more hard rock bands, but I like a lot of different stuff, and Matching Mole is a great example of that. And sort of my introduction to what Matching Mole was going to be about was buying the first two Soft Machine albums and cutouts when I was about 13 or 14. And I didn't understand the music. I just knew it was weird, and I really grew to love it because it was so weird and mixed in with all the quirkiness with some great musicianship and really interesting ideas. And so when Matching Mole appeared in 1972, I ended up buying the record. I was a little shocked by the cover of the album, Little Red Record, because it looked like it celebrated communism. And of course, I'd been indoctrinated to believe communism was horrible, which it may or may not be. But I bought the record. I had no idea what to expect, and it was wonderful. And let me go into the band's history a little bit. They formed in October '71 after Robert Wyatt left Soft Machine, and the original band was Dave McCrae on electric piano, Dave Sinclair on keyboards, Robert Wyatt on drums, Phil Miller on guitar, and Bill McCormick on bass. And Dave Sinclair left the band and was replaced by Dave McCrae on electric piano. And so they recorded their first album in April 1972, and Robert Wyatt already had a couple of solo albums, Rock Bottom and Ruth is Stranger Than Richard, and it included some of the members of Matching Mole, and led directly to him forming this band, an idea he had all along. So the first album was all Robert Wyatt material, but by the time they got to their second album later in 1972, Little Red Record, which was produced by Robert Fripp, the band was writing most of the material, and Robert Wyatt was mostly contributing lyrics. But a really, really interesting band. I think it really takes the original concept of Soft Machine to the next level and brings those concepts into the '70s, and really wonderful Canterbury sound, which I didn't know what Canterbury sound was back then, but I do now with bands like Caravan. And it's progressive, but not in the same way as bands like Yes and Genesis. A great amount of technique, but once again, not like bands like Yes and Genesis, who used a lot of quasi-classical moves and were pretty bombastic in a lot of ways. But they had more of a jazz influence, and so that made them a very very peculiar band. And Robert Wyatt's vocals, of course, are very distinctive. So they're just really great stuff. They actually managed to release one single of "Oh Caroline," not exactly what you'd call a singles band. But 1972, Dave Sinclair and Phil Miller formed the band Hatfield in the North, another Canterbury band, and they took some of the similar ideas, but were definitely more streamlined, a little more conventional, and a really cool band in themselves. But one of the losses, of course, of Matching Mole and Robert Wyatt, because they were about to record a third album with a new lineup, and Robert Wyatt famously fell out of a window and became semi-paralyzed and was in a wheelchair, so was no longer a drummer. But they were going to record a third album that was going to include Francis Monkman from Curved Air on keyboards and Gary Window, a jazz saxophonist. So it would have been really great to hear that third album in 1973, the whole concept of Matching Mole, but with a jazz sax player instead of a guitar player. It would have really taken the band in some really interesting directions, and it's sad that that never happened. Fortunately, there's a lot of material left behind. Not only are there the two albums, but a couple of live records, March and Smoke Signals, were released, and there was also a Japanese Live in the BBC '72 album. So there's a pretty good amount of material for a band that existed very shortly. And also, fortunately, there's a great television appearance posted on YouTube, which I'll post below along with everything else. So we get to actually see the band live, which is great. They don't live, of course, they're just a little more straightforward and a little more stripped down because there was a lot of studio wizardry done on the two records to some extent. But Matching Mole, definitely one of the most unique bands era, even in the 70s. And anybody that is a fan of early Soft Machine up to the third and fourth albums, which were mostly instrumental, but with Robert Wyatt's interesting, peculiar vocals on them as well. Great stuff. And Matching Mole for me is that much more interesting because Robert Wyatt's material dominates. His very unique vocal style dominates, and just a killer band with a lot of jazz chops. So that makes him one of the more interesting progressive bands, along with King Crimson. So for anybody who hasn't heard Matching Mole, I got some posts below. Check them out. But once again, I fucking love Matching Mole. One of the most interesting bands ever of that era. And once again, as I mentioned, it's really unfortunate that we never got that third album. But we're probably blessed just to have the two albums we do. And Matching Mole, of course, actually means in bastardized French means soft machine. So that's a great play on words. That in essence the band was using the same name, just in bastardized French. So Matching Mole. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.